let's go ahead and discuss the mechanics of the neural system when we're speaking about the collective consciousness, a collective consciousness, a hive mind consciousness. You know, from a strict, which is my approach, physics perspective, the flaw of any type of collective consciousness is reliance on a closed, fully integrated circuit, because there's no individual neurological systemic functionary conversion taking place. Is a collective consciousness. Now, so because the collective consciousness functions as a singular unbroken entity, it is governed by the laws of thermodynamics, wave propagation, and network topology. So that makes a very how many physicists just fainted when I read that? That's absolutely terrifying. That's scary. Now, and I'm going to go ahead and plug in that the videos that I made, they go with written works of mine. This is just everything I do regarding science. It is a part of a greater work. So this goes with the speaking come good at the oral presentation. It goes with a written work. So I know a lot of you that heard me read those ingredients had to sit down like that, because those laws dictate a very terrifying reality. It means that the thoughts, the feelings of the thousands or millions or billions that are part of this collective consciousness are not theirs. And the entire structure is locked in a permanent systemic deficit. And I spoke about deficit, and that there's always a deficit in the other video. So it kind of it renders a hyper vulnerability to a instantaneous single point shutdown. Now, and scientifically, us knowing that the shutdown would just be quite instantaneous, and you know, even when with this, and you know, we don't go by what the public says. I always override what they say and what they speak, because the position that they're coming from is not a position of any type of intelligence. So when you hear people say that they're a part of a collective consciousness, they know not what they are speaking. Now, but because that is known, when they speak, they're not taken as anyone. It's like not even categorizing them as anyone that would be chosen to state what the weather is for the day. It's just not going to be anything that is taken seriously. So, you know, is very intrinsic him. So even when you speak about the physics of stolen cognition, which is wave superposition, in short, is what it is. The architecture would be individual thoughts and personal feelings do not exist within a collective consciousness. Now, is because in a collective consciousness, brains do not generate data, not local data to the unit. So meaning that we know that that individual node person does not generate any type of feelings or thoughts or feelings or emotions, despite what they think they're feeling or thinking or having as emotions. It's coming from a collective consciousness, and we'll speak about where that data comes for them to think that they're feeling or having emotions like that and thinking and taking independent actions. So knowing that the individual brains of nodes that are part of a collective consciousness do not generate local data, meaning that they, as an individual, do not generate anything regarding independent feelings, thoughts, despite what they're thinking or think they're feeling. Now, they act purely as biological antennas because they're a part of a collective consciousness. Now, and because I'm talking to the scientists now, is whenever I'm speaking about science, I'm speaking directly to scientists. I'm not speaking to people with opinions and thoughts, or most definitely not to the people of the collective consciousness. Okay. Now, it would be, so knowing this regarding any collective consciousness with a biological antenna, and when we speak about space, which is more interesting to speak about than the people, the humans that are part of this, that are part of a collective consciousness. When you speak about space and talking about that antenna, we speak about the core of where this impact happened and caused this consciousness to develop as it had in that antenna. And it goes with what I spoke about in the last video. And it goes with the work of if something happens within that positional point to that system, and we're speaking about the primary conduit, something happens, meaning there's some type of maybe a secondary impact or a shifting or a moving or a time code atom for complete flatlining, for lack of a better word, and that will affect the humans that are part of this collective consciousness, because that they will be that biological antenna connected to that type of energy. Now, so that's something that we most definitely keep in mind. Now, because this primary node where the impact happened is where the impact. Now, it is a vulnerable because it cannot generate. Now, so it being the reason that those people that are connected to this conscious, that biological antenna, they're functioning catatonics. Now, and we know a functioning catatonic, that's very contradictory. But their functionability is because they're a hive mind. And because any experience they're having is not independently generated. That's why a functioning catatonic. Now, we know that a catatonic that is not a part of a hive mind, they cannot function. Okay. Catatonic that are part of a hive mind is likened to being catatonic. They can't function independently, but they can function through the projections that is around this impact that comes from a field outside of that sphere and outside of that area of space, and it will create that. And it's like remanufactured experiences that are projected from this field, and the hive mind is just remanufactured within that hive mind collective space, that hive mind collective consciousness, but in different variations because it has to go through the group. And so when you're speaking about a consciousness that can't generate energy but has to keep those nodes in power in quotation mark system up or powered up mode, we'll offload them, because it's not about feelings or anything like that. We'll offload if it becomes too much for the primary conduit, and signaling that wave signal of when energy is being conserved or preserved, because the primary conduit cannot generate its own energies, and because it goes by the time of the impact and that happening. That's what's coded in its beginnings, in its atoms that are fired up, and it goes through that lifespan now of becoming catatonic. The way the debris in any human would be, the debris they would pick up what they would pick up as human biological antennas would be the actual debris from the debris that is held in stasis around the impact primary conduit. So we know that because that's just thermodynamics, and thermodynamics would be the centerfold for that type of deficit, and that type of energy crisis from the primary conduit there. So when you're speaking about a collective consciousness and maintaining a single synchronized consciousness across thousands of organic bodies or millions or billions, is because a collective consciousness they're synchronized like that, and they pick up the signal in milliseconds, but pick it up in variations like that, even though it could appear to them that the lives are very different, but no, they're very similar. Now, because of how the practical, I'm speaking of how the neural and how it affects neurologically, picking up the signal of what will create a projected experience, picking it up within milliseconds, they're going around the hive mind quickly. Now, because they only experiencing variations, and to them, when they look at one another, the experience are different, or the people are talking and they're different. But no, is picking it up in milliseconds. The neural transmitted information of them speaking, them talking, them thinking they made decisions, them feeling. Okay, that's quick. The practical field expression of a projected experience that comes from a field that's out of this positional impact center or impact area, it comes later because it's outside of where the impact is and it doesn't have anything to do with it. So it's like being out of being like they get the neural antenna picking it up. Okay. Regarding experience, meaning anything regarding emotion, thinking, or what caused them to think or make this, they get that first in milliseconds. It goes around the group. Okay, it goes into because their biological antenna goes through how the process of an individual functioning brain that functions independently as an individual, how that process goes. Okay, that's how it goes for them, but within milliseconds around the whole entire group. Now, but for a independent human, in human, it would be lined up with experience in the hearing now, right then, within it. Now, so, but for them, that's not how it is, because it has to spread throughout the group, because they're sharing an experience, meaning the experience can be shared at the same time. It can be shared at different times. It depends on how it goes within that collective consciousness as it relates to it can become now a field vision experience to be able to be in like that and have interactions within. So it is quite time off. Now they're like in a time lag, but they're also always in deficit, because it's a consciousness that has to spread, that doesn't generate its own energy. because of the primary conduit. So it has to spread even the thought of thinking, the thought that they're talking, the thought that they're making decisions, the thought that they're walking, everything that fuels a catatonic that doesn't come from within it, but is sharing what fuels it to make it energy packed. So when you talk about a thermodynamic deficit, and a thermodynamic deficit is not one of the, it is not one of the major deficits regarding space, but it is major for this here because of the collective consciousness is not a part of the natural order. That's why it's energy. That's why it's in deficit in the energy crisis, because in not being able to generate its own energy, because it's not a part of the natural order. So because when it's of a collective consciousness, it's always going to be in deficit. It's like having, for example, one car battery, but it has to power up 10,000 cars or 5 billion cars, but it doesn't generate its own energy. And it's not a, and it's not a, and even with that, this is not a part of the natural order of the of a greater battery and wider battery system, because remember, collective consciousness is not connected to the whole of the mathematical formula of what the universe is in that systemic order. Now, so that's why thermodynamic deficit is very significant in this here positioning, because maintaining that single synchronized, because they have to be in synchronized, and a lot of the energy, and it does not generate energy, it goes to them, keeping them in sync, and then loading some of them off also. Now, so you're speaking about maintaining a single synchronized consciousness across thousands or millions or billions of organic bodies. It violates the natural efficiency of a localized system. So when we speak about the physics, information processing, it requires energy. Now, in a decentralized network, nodes, meaning the humans that are part of this collective consciousness, they filter and discard noise locally. So is every node, every person that's a part of this consciousness, they have to process the data of every other person to maintain a unified consciousness. So now that's explained with the way a collective consciousness will work with humans now. So when we in how that it represents, obviously the fundamental way that the primary conduit where the impact happened, and the debris that is held in states, the particle debris, and how it the transmitting the data for that debris to stay in stasis, the way that the impact left it, is how it goes from particle to particle of the debris that is circulating within that area of space. Because remember, debris is was from the broken system of when this impact happened, and that does not have to come together physically. The debris does not have to be connected to the conduit, just like the people are not connected to the consciousness. They're a part of a collective consciousness. They don't have to be physically connected. Now, so when you're talking about the energy overhead with that is catastrophic. Now, because that type of a collective consciousness system, it has to continuously burn vast amounts of metabolic and bioelectric energy combined just to keep the network from fragmenting, because a collective consciousness it works in synchronization. It's not, I'm team this, I'm team that. That's not a collective consciousness. Now, you're still probably there's still probably a collective consciousness, but not the way that they think. So there are team that, but this is the motor of the team. There can be team whatever their mind wishes them to think, but this is how the motor functions. Now, so the reality is that the collective consciousness exists in a perpetual energetic deficit. So it's like in a permanent stasis of draining the biological resources of the host, just like it just to hold its unified shape. So the state of consciousness in space for the debris to stay within that realm of where the impact is, there's energy burned, but from a core conduit that does not generate energy, only has the data encoded memory of the impact that generated its initial fire, and that's going on. So it's within some type of time rotation of what that does. Now, so when you bring that to people, it will be they're more connected than they think, even though they will be thinking about, we're collected because we know what happened and this happened and it happened to all of us, so we feel they're more connected than that. If they're a part of a collective consciousness, they're connected in a way that is, they don't know that and feel that and agree with that because they're thinking about it or think that they've experienced it. They're doing it because they have no other choice, because they're a collective consciousness. They can't generate anything other than that. Even though there could be minor variations with how, what they think about it or what they say about it, they're still just a collective consciousness. It's just the same thing. So when we speak about cascade collapse and the single point shutdown, I've written in depth about this. This is a part of, this is the because all of my work scientifically, it has the very, very delicate information regarding a multitude of things, not just about collective consciousness, but everything not right, but it has the I deal with the dangers and how to stop this or how to do this, like that. That's not, they are kumbaya. That's not science. So this here with the cascade collapse is in that single point shutdown. And with the secret society is I'll skip that. So of scientists, I'll skip that there and say that for later what I was going to state. So when we talk about the cascade and the collapse, the single point shutdown, you have to remember, because the entirety of a collective consciousness acts as one macroscopic quantum state. Now, so because it lacks the physical dampening constants required to isolate trauma. Now, and the trauma was to the core, the primary node there with the impact of what brought it into that type of consciousness. Now, so we know that in wave dynamics, a destructive frequency introduces a we know that a destructive frequency introduced to a perfectly synchronized medium travels without resistance. So with that, there's no boundaries, insulations, or protective capsuling. That's why I mentioned about the primary conduit being a very, very sensitive, and it's very sensitive because it's on a time encapsulated, time being coded with the nose into that destructed nucleus regarding or regarding that primary impact. And is stuck within that time. Now, so running on a massive energy deficit. So it leaves it with zero defenses, reserves. So if even when you're speaking about a person as an example to the work, or any person of any of them, because there's just a group, or there's just one big thing, is even if we see like targeting the neural core, if we're that would be the neural core, because the primary node will be the neural core for the debris that's around it, and we're speaking about space. Now, so targeting that, and I spoke about that in the video, and is targeting that neural core for that which is in space with a highly concentrated or unresolvable paradox, or a sudden localized trauma like a secondary impact. It would hit the entire apparatus at once, meaning the humans that are part of that collective consciousness and have that biological antenna. Now, okay, now that's from space. Now, if you're speaking about people and those that are of this collective consciousness, one of them, because they're all sharing the same feelings, thoughts, whatever, that doesn't belong to them, but they can feel that it does, because that's all that they would have. So, and just different variations of what is done with that. Now, if it happens to a person, the cascade collapse, the single point shutdown, and it could be any person. You don't have to be up close and near to the person or anything with that. With science, this is very simplistic. It doesn't even take advanced science for that. Now, so with one person, you're hitting the entire apparatus at once. Now, the only difference is, and I liken this part, the space, is the amount of the transmission of fire that is utilized will be the only difference in how it affects the entirety of the collective consciousness, even though there will be an effect on the entirety of the collective consciousness. What affects one affects all of them. Now, so because a collective consciousness cannot quarantine the breach, the destructive wave would expands exponentially through the empty strained circuit, because remember, they will be the antenna when you're speaking about people. That would be, and that's how they're connected to a collective consciousness like that. So it would be triggering a systemic feedback loop amongst the consciousness, the way that their ability to walk, the way that their ability to talk, the way that their ability to do whatever, it is just a feedback loop within that consciousness, and it forces an immediate total brain death or global shutdown of the entire collective consciousness. Now is what it would do, because we're speaking about how a collective consciousness is neurally connected to one another. This with the and that's just the that's the laws that will govern that, because of the type of carrier waves that a collective consciousness operates on is a unified global brainwave frequency. So this type of shared neural oscillation acts as a central wave. It keeps thousands of separate brains synced to a single baseline. Now, so when one goes silent because it's from the core, they all go silent. When they're active, they're all active like that. Okay. Now, is that now bringing them out of that is quite easy. Now, but it has to be it would be the node that is shares more material or biologically antenna with the core conduit, like that. That it is that, just like when we're speaking about space, the impact, primary conduit, and the debris, the particles that are in that area of space around the impact point, those particles are all carry the encoding of that impact. It is collected because it's so. But there will be other certain quarks within the particles that carry more of the fire that's connected to this, like that. So if you send it's an amplification and it's going to hit those particles first and then go through the rest of the particles. And then in the conduit transmit to the particles. We're speaking about space, and obviously the more sensitive particles was closest to this impact and broke apart, we get the transmit, and then it circulates there. So when you're speaking about people and them being biological, there will be a biological antenna if they're connected to a collective consciousness. Okay, so the ones that are broken up from the core, they will get it the transmission first of any type of injection sent, and then it'll spread throughout the consciousness like that. Now, and all of them will get it, whatever it is. So because that core node is like the biological router, so it will be those, and then people equivalent to the debris. The core is not an artificial like motherboard or anything like that. So it's a specialized, highly conductive organic brain position at the geometric center of the network topology. So is the impact center when we're speaking about the primary node within space. So that soul functioning, just like the humans connected to this a collective consciousness, their soul neural function is to receive, compress, and rebroadcast the collective thoughts so that there is no signal delay or latency between the bodies. So if you're a part of a collective consciousness, the only thing you're doing is receiving. You're not generating any original thoughts or any type of thinking or making any decisions. You're just receiving, and it's so that it can spread within that collective to everybody that's a part of that collective consciousness, and that is being spread neurologically. So, because collective consciousness, they share one brain, even though they have individual ones that do not work. The only reason that the individual brains or generate anything is because they are biological antennas to what they're receiving from whatever the core, from the collective conscious core production there. So it's like a synaptic entrainment, so to speak, when you're speaking about, because we're speaking about the neurochemistry there. And I spoke about the neurochemistry a year and a half ago. I think it may have been 2 years, but because the system is neural, it obeys the physics of wave dynamics. So when you force a single node to focus on something, for example, if you force a single human node to focus on something, it creates a localized high voltage neural spike that gets all of them like that, but differently like that, because has to get all of them, though they experience it differently or in variations. So they could so the network it cannot filter it out because it is a real biological signal, because you're going through an actual node human that is a part of a collective consciousness, so it can't be filtered. They receive it across the board to their minds, because we're speaking about the neurological connection that a collective consciousness will have, and then they experience it with minor variations. So, because it is a nightmare of a hardwired circuit is what it is. So and because they're functioning neural rather than individual independent functioning neural, there are no there's no resistance or shielding from that. Meaning that they can't be isolated from that spreading amongst them. So and that's how their brains work. Okay, in short. So even if you introduce something, they can easily be controlled, because scientifically we can introduce something like thoughts or panic or some type of awakening into the neural core of anyone of you, if you're talking about a human. But if we're talking about space, into the primary node there, and it will have that effect on the debris that is in stasis in those and what is fired up within those atoms, to subdue it or to amplify it. That can happen. So when you're speaking about the neural core and its people and the synaptic pathways, they will automatically propagate that signal to every connected brain at the speed of an axon reflex, because the collective is just trapped by its own organic tissue. So if the core wakes up, the entire neural circuit snaps awake with it, because they can't do anything without it happening to all of them and running through the complete line like that. So it's quite it's not anything fascinating, because with the collective consciousness, everything is connected there. Within a normal society, when you think about, because when you speak about, for example, how they experience pain like this now, so and how that's generated for them, or any type of emotions, or even when you talk about how thoughts are generated or how thoughts are transmitted and how they experience that, is in a normal society, these things can be contained, but in a collective, there's no insulation, because they're a collective consciousness. So what one's experience is going to have to go through all of them like that. So is the shared strike, and we're speaking neurologically. They don't have to know one another. They can be at a distance. They could be in another country. They could be in whatever, like that. Okay. So is the shared strike. So if you strike a single node with a hammer, for example, or the electrical impulses of the physical trauma that one would have from the hammer is instantly broadcast across the entire network. Now, they may not pick it up as a hammer hit, but they'll pick it up as some type of transmission that ignites a response neurologically that associates itself with feeling, because they collective consciousness just it has a feedback loop. You have thousands of bodies. They feel the phantom impact in the exact same millisecond. Now, the collective consciousness does not absorb the shock to lessen the blow, so it means that it generates differently, but it forces every single brain to suffer the agony of a blow that it never physically received. Now, even if the one of the nodes actually experienced it as a hammer, that doesn't mean that all of the nodes will experience it as a hammer, but they will experience pain, because remember, they're connected neurologically. Now, so it'll show up as a pain. It can show up as a mental pain. It can show up as a physical pain. It can show up as an emotional pain. It's just how they generate feeling. Now, how experience is generated for them, which comes along later, is from a field outside of where the first impact happened, which they will be the biological transmitters of if they are collective consciousness. And experience can happen later. Now, meaning, for example, if one node experiences a hammer hit, now, and then all of them at that millisecond, neurologically, they get that transmission of pain. Now, so, and then they get it at the millisecond, this node experiences it. They get it at the same time, but one node is out because they got the physical too. Now, and then the rest of it, because they're a collective consciousness, they're neurologically in milliseconds, they all get that transmission of pain. It can be a month later, or 2 months later, or a year later, or next week, or tomorrow night, that experience, because the field impression has to come from outside of where the impact was, where the primary conduit is for them to even function, because that's where the transmission will be picked up from. Because there will be biological, be biological antennas. That's when they'll have the experience of, oh, I hurt my leg, oh, on my back hurt, oh, I have a toothache, oh, I dropped this on me, oh, I got hit with a hammer, oh, this is, like that. That's how they have experiences. It'll be with variations. Because a collective consciousness has an instant containment failure. The curiosity of tension, for example, and the counting of seconds leaked. When something happens to one of the nodes, it to a target node, it floods the entire population instantly. In milliseconds, they get that transmission. Now, I mean, they get that imprint neurologically, brain imprint, that this is going to be a future experience to some variation or another. They don't get there, this one got hit, so all of us are hit like that, and it happens instantly. No, they get the neurological imprint first, the brain imprint, that's going to be a future experience with different variations, because the variation is going to come from a field experience that causes them to even be able to have an experience. The intrinsic nature of the mechanics of a collective consciousness hive mind. So this type of loss strips the collective of any defense, is, so if even with what's for one is for all, when we speak about the trial, they don't have any defense of innocent elements, because the network cannot claim that it's atrocities or silences or doings or behaviors are the fault of a few, bad people or one bad person because they're a collective consciousness. So every action taken by a single hand is approved, processed, and felt by the entire collective mind. Because they're a collective consciousness. So if you have one node on the stand, when you put one node on the stand of a trial, the entire hive sits in the defendant's chair. Is every eye in the dark, so to speak, reflects the same guilt because every brain shared the exact same choice. That's a collective consciousness. Despite being there or knowing the person or knowing the happenings or whatever it is or knowing, or it doesn't matter, it's just a part of a collective consciousness. So there are no innocent bystanders because they operate as one mind. They share the absolute undivided responsibility for every action, every silence, and every awakening. Awakening meaning everything that's brought to their attention. So in order to judge the hive, there's only one, only need to look at a single node because that node is the hive. You know, one can represent the hive, or the hive represents one. It doesn't matter. It's the voice of one is the voice of a billion minds. The single body, vocal cords move, but the words are chosen by the collective consciousness of thousands or millions or billions of brains processing the question simultaneously. That's a collective consciousness. So when we look at a universal witness, if that one node saw the blinking of a green light, for example, then every single node in the network saw it, felt the curiosity, or counted the seconds. They would have a experience with a variation because they're a collective consciousness. So as a physicist, and there being a single node to question, for me to question, and I don't question where they have a mouth answer. That single node is not talking. Is not talking as a person. They are talking to the entire population at once. Now, because they're a collective consciousness, a collective mind. So it cannot be taken at that point as an individual either. Because you can't isolate a single node's thoughts because the network is a single pool of data. There is no individualism or independence. And when you speak about projecting and mass mirroring simultaneous actions and simultaneous with a collective consciousness doesn't mean doing everything the same at the exact same time. It means that everything will be done across the board of that collective consciousness, but within variations, because that's all that they can do. You know, and so with lag of thought and execution across the network, the collective moves like a flock of startling or school of fish, but with absolute precision, because they will have to be within that type of synchronicity. Now, and that takes things into unified physics. If the core node decides to turn left to look at a green light, for example, thousands of heads turn at the exact same time in that microsecond. Now, this is how it can work also when it's physically how they move. mean a part of a collective consciousness. If one person that is at a store and they turn left, there could be someone in Cincinnati in their car looking left, like that. Collective consciousness, they're doing things. And then there could be someone in Mississippi picking up something with their left hand. And then there could be someone in Canada doing something regarding the left. They just have minor variations, but they're functioning within the same system. There is no command being passed down a chain, excuse me. It is one mind moving its entire distributed body at once, like that, but within variation. It is similar to an echo chamber. If a node panics, the entire collective panics instantly. Now, they can be somebody, one of the people that are part of the collective consciousness can be in a different country panicking. There will be another one of the collective consciousness, or the rest of it, they'll be panicking, but about different things. These things can sometimes happen instantly. Now, they can be having a panic attack. Anything can be happening to them, because they're one collective consciousness. It doesn't have to be for the same reason, but it would be the same experience. We're speaking about how they get physical sensations, mental imprints. We're speaking about the neural connectivity of the hive mind and how they actually function and what's passed down the chain. One mind moving its entire distributed body at once. Now, that echo chamber of instantaneousness, this makes the system incredibly fragile. A hive mind is a very fragile system because it cannot control the emotional state of its individual units. Their emotions and feelings don't even belong to them. It can be radical empathy as a kinetic force also, because in a normal society, if one person hurts, others feel sympathy. Now, in a collective consciousness, if one of the nodes experiences a physical or emotional sensation, the entire network experiences the exact same sensory data simultaneously. It can be for different reasons, and they can feel it at the moment, or it be encoded, because we're speaking about the neurological and the neurological response, and how the transmission of brain waves are transmitted through the collective consciousness, so that they can have any type of sensory, even if that sensory is waited later to have within the brain. This is how it gets here. So is a and that's how pain is produced. That's how joy and happiness is produced. If a node experiences awe or discovery or the relief or type of relief or type of euphoria surges through the entire population, collective consciousness, like a massive shared dopamine wave. And then that experience can happen later for them. The individual experience that goes with that sensory transmission that happened together and is transmitted to the brain, dormant, waiting for the transmission of how experience is created, so they can be within it, like that. Now, and sometimes things can be felt instantly, but with minor variations. Now, to a significant variation, it depends, but this is how things are distributed across their collective network. It is quite detailed there. So is different because when you speak about a collective consciousness, and if the goal is not to destroy the collective consciousness, but to to wake it up, so to speak. It'll still be a collective consciousness, but wake it up out of a passive baseline state. And I spoke about how to do that with the primary conduit when you're speaking about space and things like that. When you're speaking about a frozen pond and turn a frozen pond into an active, churning, viable, because of their catatonic, viable. It's hard to even give a description to that phrase there of what that would be or what you can class them as. They'll stay connected, but they will no longer be a uniform block within the guise of what they were, a uniform block within that specific chamber. But they'll still just go on to be a unified block regarding whatever else. So it's quite different. Even when you speak about triggering memory for a collective consciousness is not memory, because it would be a projection that they all share, because that's what experience is for them. Is just a projection. And triggering that would be quite easy to trigger some type of projection, or we reawaken some type of projection, and that they could now, because if we speak about space, that primary conduit is on a timeline that's shorter and shorter. So they could now, people that would be biologically connected in the biological antenna to any type of collective consciousness, they would be the experiences with that they would share, because anything they do is just a shared collective projection. They could be just now just recycled, and with minor variations, with very little new introduction to it. I'm trying to speak over things regarding the neuromechanisms and sensory shock and things like that, and different approaches. So I'm not going to speak about that. Because I don't want to speak about that here. And when you speak about even things with the mechanism of total system collapses, is in biological contagions, these would be unchecked transmissions, because it's a collective consciousness, and what is applied neurologically across the board is applied neurologically across the board, and everything is born from that transmission that the body experiences, that their mind experiences also, and what is experienced physically. So in an organism with a zero internal boundaries, because a collective consciousness doesn't have any boundaries, a pathogen or a virus introduced to one unit, meaning one person, it bypasses traditional immune barriers, and it's just all of them, because it'll be a neurotransmission of creating that virus and that virus response across the board. Because the collective consciousness, there will be a instantaneous exposure, because the interconnected biology treats the disease as a shared systemic fluid or a signal, because we're speaking about the neural aspect and the transmission of a virus into the a neurotransmission of a virus into the brain of a collective consciousness. Okay, that's what's going to create that virus and that type of shared experience. It'll infect every unit simultaneously before quarantine protocols can be conceptualized. So it is a very vulnerable position to be a part of a collective consciousness there. And obviously that answering a lot of the questions regarding what else down and why people go through similar things. So if there's the anonymity of freedom, because true individual autonomy is entirely incompatible with a high integration collective framework. So it kind of renders the concepts like personal choice or privacy obsolete when you're in a collective consciousness, because you're neurally connected, your brains are connected, so there is no privacy. So there is no individualism, even though they can feel that there is one and that they are. So they're unconscious. People of a collective consciousness are unconscious. They're functioning catatonics. You can't be a part of a collective consciousness and be conscious. Consciousness is of an individual nature. It's not, we're of a collective consciousness because we get one another. And we understand we're connected to one another. No, you're unconscious. You're functioning catatonics. And the reason that you can function is because across the board, the transmission is sent and everybody's doing the same thing. Any deviation from that, it's not going to happen. Even though on the superficiality of we're doing different things that could be on the superficial, at the superficial level, at the biological level, that's not it. So if the system sends the command of a total shutdown, okay, that's a total shutdown. Biological shutdown, physical shutdown, mental shutdown, neurological shutdown. If something happens at the primary node within space, and if you're a part of a collective consciousness, that means you're a biological antenna to a consciousness that you can't control, that you're controlled by, because you're a part of a collective consciousness, not your own individual faculties. So if something happens, or that shifts or moves, or it times out, you being a part of the collective consciousness, you would time out and shift and move too. Shift and move and time out to what? Who the hell knows? I'm not getting into that. But that's what would happen, because that's what happened to a collective consciousness. So their teams and being team this and team that is more connected than they think. That's why when they're brought before the bench, I don't bring one, I bring all of them. Because there's no differentiation between any of them. Because the core transmission that is beneath the surface, meaning the mechanics of how they function, is what the science hits, not the superficiality of what they think makes them individuals. Though they still feel that they're connected too. They know that they're a collective consciousness. So that's the a little bit more of the work. Now, and you all with your individual work regarding what is known about this. But because I get things like this in the end, or is brought to me and comes across my desk regarding specific things that are happening that I have to observe or is wanted for me to observe, and then I give my opinion. Is usually part of a greater work that I've already done, or some type of work I can add on to, or corresponding to somebody else's work scientifically. So that's a little bit more what I have regarding it, because more of mine is regarding space and not the people that will be a part of a collective consciousness. When I hear people say they're a part of a collective, I just ignore that and just, like, I know most of what the majority of what they're saying. So mine is more regarding space, now an impact. But not this specifically, is just regarding the universe in general and completely. So that's what I have about this type of impact and the happenings and how it can be connected and associated with people and those that are part of that collective consciousness and those types of experiences. Now, when you're speaking about numerical value and configuring those types of things with numerical values of the people that would be a part of this collective consciousness, you would have to take things back into evolution. Now, in cellular and DNA and genetic makeup, and go back to those types of formations, because humans are made of billions of year-old atoms. So that would be quite easy to pinpoint and gather more intrinsic and detailed information on regarding numerical quotients of how many people could be actually a part of a collective consciousness. Now, so that would be have to be correspond with that type of work. And because I spoke about evolution some years ago, and whenever I'm asked the question about evolution, I don't answer human questions. I only, whenever it's brought up to me scientifically as a scientific opinion by scientists, I don't interact with people talking. Now, in my statements on evolution in the past, as how I as a physicist, beginning for me is the cosmos. Now, even though beginning with humans, because I know somebody, but like, well, if we're gonna add it and try to get that numerical value in humans, the evolution like that, scientists, evolutionists, it would be they will start that point of human evolution. Now, my starting, obviously, as a scientist, obviously, is evolution, like beginning. Like, which there is no beginning. Like, okay, but it would go there. So you would start with whenever any type of question regarding evolution, because I'm thorough and detailed, any type of question regarding evolution, even if you're talking about human evolution and separated from the cosmos, which is impossible, but even if you're just focused on that, scientists focus on that, and that's your area of work, because I take it back to and associate with the cosmos and specific areas of space, because humans are made of that. So that would be their beginning. Even when you're speaking about certain diseases, and I spoke about this some years ago also regarding diseases that were going to be new, that were going to generate around the population, and also other diseases and those types of things that are already within the population that are incurable or foreign and that the body generates. Now, because there's no external causes or reason or onsets, and it's self-generated, and you always have to take it to what humans are predominantly as it relates to their physical structure, in taking it there, as opposed to starting with evolution like that. And that giving whatever information it gives. When you're speaking about timelines and evolutionary milestones and more human physiology and neurophysics. And I spoke about that also regarding humans. Because my work regarding humans, anything complex regarding them, I take it to where the predominancy of what they consist of is that for any type of human physical enigma or biological enigma like that, which there aren't many. So as a physicist, for me, all the answers are there. There's not much. Here is just the baseline. It's like the answers here. This would be the cosmos, and then the people. This is the baseline of, and this is where the those type of happenings, questions like that, and so this is obviously is not a starting point with physics. This is kind of the let's go see what's wrong with the Earthlings point. It's that. So that's it there. Bye.